You seem hungry. Good thing your table is ready with Saturday Omaha.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this. Hey everybody, this is Dave with Saturday. We are sitting in studio about ready to talk about an event that I've had the fortune of talking about for, this will be 3 years in a row. Listeners out there, if you've listened to the show for a long time, you're going to know both these guests. I have Chef Brian O'Malley from Metropolitan Community College Institute for the Culinary Arts. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you for getting the whole name out. That's pretty awesome.
Not too shabby, not too shabby. And Carole Patrick from the VNA, third time in a row, here to talk with us. Carole, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me back a third year.
Yes, this is great. And we are here and we are going to be focusing on the VNA's Art and Soup. So this is a confluence of two wonderful things and for a very good cause, which is why we are here to talk about it. And of course, we're going to dig into the food portion as well. But for those that haven't heard about Art and Soup, which is taking place, by the way, March 9th, 2025. So this is a timely broadcast and recording here to make sure we do those things. And it's happening at the Omaha Design Center, which is at 1502 Cumming Street. But Carole, what's Art and Soup besides, of course, art and soup?
Besides the obvious.
Yes.
It is a fundraiser for Visiting Nurse Association. And I think a lot of your listeners, Dave, can get behind the cause for this fundraiser because we are making sure that we are keeping VNA nurses in every homeless shelter and domestic violence shelter in Omaha and Council Bluffs. Our nurses are there. They've been there for over 30 years within the shelter system. And they are the front line. You have to think of our VNA nurses as the MASH units. Mm-hmm. When folks are coming into the shelters and they're working alongside those shelter staff members to triage physical and mental health issues as folks are coming in, and to help them stabilize, mm-hmm. so that they can eventually transition out of homelessness. But it's just a super important cause to have our nurses in those shelters working with people. So
it definitely takes a village, and to have those professionals there
mm-hmm.
to help in some very tough situations, be they mental, physical, nutritional, whatever those things may be, mm-hmm. is very, very valuable. And I think we had talked about some of the domestic violence shelters and stuff that the VNA helps out with.
Right.
And kind of off mic before we started, you were saying that the population is increasing in kind of an unexpected demographic in the Omaha area lately.
Yeah, this demographic really breaks my heart. It's the fastest growing population in our local shelters is older adults. And so we even have, I put one of these marketing pieces in front of you, and one of the photos we have is a client with our VNA nurse, and that client is using a walker. She's in her 70s. She has chronic health conditions, mm-hmm. and this is a human being who had to make a choice between, do I eat, do I take my medication, do I pay my rent? I can't afford to do all three.
Wow.
And she ends up losing her home and being in a shelter system.
Wow.
And I can't even imagine what that must feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, we are there to help with those things. And what the types of situations that will happen is someone will come in and they won't have been taking their insulin, or they won't have been taking medication. And so they're unstable. There's all sorts of health issues going on. There's also a 70% rate of mental health, co-occurring mental health issues with people who are in the shelter system. And so our nurses are there, and they are working alongside that, again, to stabilize. And I was talking with someone the other day of, man, is this what the future looks like as we are an aging population, right? As these baby boomers are aging in our society, do we need to come up with a new system for older adults and making sure that we're providing all of this? If they end up in the shelter, what are we going to do from there, and how are we going to make sure that we're taking care of them?
Because as they age, I would imagine the needs for healthcare attention
They only rise.
right? I mean,
right.
I certainly have noticed it in my own life that as I get older, I at the hospital more than I used to be. But that's highlights and focuses the need to support nurses in the shelters, so the population there gets the chance to stabilize
to get healthy, to find a medical home, right? So they can stay healthy, and then transition to other things. And food is important in the shelters too.
for sure.
Yeah, I think definitely a basic need in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is food, but I think not just the nourishment, but the mental medicine, if you will, of having a good meal, a hot meal, is very, very important. And I know in years past we had talked with some of the chefs, like from Stevens Center and et cetera, about how those things happen. But that is why Art and Soup exists, is to help these efforts. And what's the layout for Art and Soup 2025 looking like? What's happening?
Right. So not only is it a fundraiser, and I know I'm just a little bit biased, but I think it is one of the most unique fundraisers in the community.
It's a great one.
It truly is. So no tables for 10, no speeches, no ice sculptures, no, you're going to come in, and we have, Brian, how many restaurants do we have right now?
We usually land at about 20. I think we're at 16 right now. So.
Nice.
So we should have about 20 restaurants. They're required to make soup.
Yep.
That some of them bring additional things, but they are required to make soup. And so you get to go around and hit every spot, and some spots more than once. And then there is an indoor art festival happening at the same time. The restaurants all donate all of the cost of the food, and the artists have promised to contribute 50% of their sales. So between ticket sales and the art sales, as folks come in, that is how we raise the money that day.
And so we're up to 16 restaurants, give or take a little bit?
Yes, I'm looking at the...
Yeah.
Share some of the lists.
Well, yeah, so we
really
have a good conversation. So maybe give me a couple that are showing up there.
A couple very exciting ones are Slattery Vintage Estates, which is kind of a glamping and wine destination down south of town. Open Door Mission is bringing a soup this year. So is the Ono Panay Kitchen, which is a awesome Polynesian restaurant right down by Offutt Air Force Base. So you see already, I mean, just in those three, an incredibly diverse kind of set of restaurants. But you also end up with some of the, really nice places like Pitch, where, you don't think of them necessarily as a place for soup. I don't even know if Pitch has soup on the regular menu.
Well, that's where I was at with Ono Panay. Maria, who's head chef down there and owner, we did a great episode. She taught me how to cook pancit, which was awesome, and she's been on the show before. I don't think I've ever had a soup from her, so I'd be curious to see what she's bringing to the table, as it were. Yeah.
Last year they had an incredible soup. They always have a very cool table as well. They bring great decorations and stuff like that. I mean, it's a party. Like
it's a very festive,
it's a very fun
atmosphere.
Event. So
yeah.
That's totally worth checking out. The restaurants love doing it. I mean, I think that we've got some restaurants that have participated every year that I've been aware of it. And it's because it's a great way to give to a cause that you may not be able to have the size of impact that's necessary as one chef or one operation. But when you see that what you're doing could draw people that are paying for it and then supporting the organization in other ways, it really gets to multiply your impact. And I think that people love that. I know I love getting to give in a way that gets accelerated because people will pay for what I'm giving in a way that helps it have a better impact. But I also love seeing the 20 other chefs in the room, like, helping shelter nursing aside. It's a reunion for all the restaurant dudes. Like, we love going and seeing our old friends and seeing chefs at places we haven't been and meeting people like Maria. I met her through Art and Soup. So there's a social fabric of the kind of chef community that comes together at Art and Soup in a way that is pretty unique to this fundraiser as well. There have been others that are like it, but normally the effort when you're there at some of those other ones is higher. Like soup is one of those great things that takes a lot to put together, but then really for service, you're kind of standing there man in a pot.
Not too bad, yeah.
And so you get a chance to mingle and connect with the attendees at the event, but also the other chefs and restaurateurs that are there. So it's been a great. I've been doing it for a long time. I think I've been over 20 years now. So
wow,
yeah, it's a wonderful event. I mean, I would say I've met some of my best culinary peeps doing art and soup. So
well, and being in the restaurant hospitality industry and being able to see some smiles on faces and that camaraderie, working with your fellow chefs and cooks to make things happen for a cause. And the restaurant community in Omaha, I'm pretty sure just about anybody would give you the shirt off their back or the hat off their head or whatever to help you be lifted up in a way. Plenty of restaurants that if you can't afford a meal, I'm sure they would help you out as best they can. I recall Chef Paul Urban from Block 16 gave a set of his own gloves to somebody that needed them. I was there. I saw it. I was just eating there on a random day at lunch and just kind of what happened. And I have a feeling those things happen more than are on everybody's radar. But then to distill and make available that effort in one spot and have everybody come together for a larger, powerful impact is a pretty neat thing. And then at the same time for the chefs to come together and be able to work together and in one effort instead of their various, kitchens and have it all concentrated on one spot is very cool. And Brian, you had said that you've been involved with this for roughly 20 years or so. So Carole, how long has Art and Soup been happening?
This is the 28th year for Art and Soup.
Year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Right. So I got there as it was a first grader. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's graduated and then some.
Right. And living back in his parents' basement, but whatever. I mean, it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. The beer's cold. It's good. So with the soups that are there, so there is what's a ticket going for Art and Soup this year?
Ticket is $50 for general admission. You can also do a patron ticket for $100, and that means you get in an hour earlier. You get, first fruits of the soup and first looks at the art.
Get the best art because you're there
and
first.
An open bar.
Oh, well, hello then. All
first
right,
hour.
Patron party's an open bar?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
Well, shoot. Goodness.
I'm usually in the back setting something up. I need to get engaged.
Well, and what I like too is, and we've talked about this on episodes past with those, 16 or so restaurants or maybe 20, depending on how many land there by the time everything
I keep
gets
throwing
all
names this
nailed
way,
down.
so
This is perfect. But that you have these awesome restaurants that are around town and you can try cuisine from them all in one place.
Right.
And, for $50 and getting 16 servings and you can go back for as much soup as you want, right?
Back.
You can until you're stuffed, right? So,
Yes.
Wow.
And you get very full.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
You do. You start making your way around, and there is there's a People's Choice Award. So while you're going around, you can vote for your favorites.
Yep.
And then Brian will have to talk about, because there is also people judging who really know what they're talking about.
Right, we've been running
when
a
it comes
battle
to
of the
food.
soups
Oh,
at
do
this for years
tell.
as
Do
well.
tell.
Yes.
All
the
right.
So we
true
put
battle
together a
of the
panel of
soups.
judges, usually either old winners that are, still hanging around, or people that one of the first people that I invited to judge is a chef named Carole Marsh, and he was working on soup research and development projects for a restaurant chain that he worked for.
Wow.
And I was like, dude, come make me smart about soup. Mm-hmm. And now he might be 17, 18 years in. He just totally loves it. But that panel changes up over time.
Sarah Baker Hansen this year.
Sarah
right?
Baker Hansen is on that panel this year.
Noted food critic.
So there's great people that participate in the judging. The restaurants all get into it because there's a traveling trophy that gets the name engraved on it of the previous winners. Avoli and Dario
that only
have
seems
been winning
appropriate,
it.
right? It's a traveling stock pot.
Oh,
It is.
very nice.
It's a
Very
stock
nice.
pot.
Yeah.
Does it get used?
I'm pretty sure Dario is cooked, but Avoli has won maybe the last two.
A couple of years, because Sternella had a run
You're right.
going there for
Sternella
a
did
while.
have a good stretch there in the middle. So it's fun. I was giving the guys from M's a hard time way back. I think they won 4 in a row one time, which might still be the record. And I was like, you better show back up. Like
You got a target
defend
on
it
you.
against the
The judges, this is like it's a blind
Totally.
judging.
Totally.
Right? You don't know what restaurant it could be Stevenson or Opened or Mission, or it could be a Voli.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so
cool.
we keep that panel sequestered and shuttle the soups back to them, and then they get to taste and do their thing. It's fun. Quite frankly, I think that room is the most fun, is sit around with four other chefs.
To be a
and
fly
talk
on
soup.
that wall.
Well, you could just come sit. You don't have to be on the wall. We'll get you in the room.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But that piece has been great over the years, and because it's all good-spirited.
Right.
But it's pretty intense. I mean, I think there have been people that get angry with me afterwards for a minute. And that's all right. Like, it means you've cared about the soup you brought. I love it.
No kidding. What criteria does one use to judge soup, or is just purely on taste and I liked it and I market it my favorite versus the other? Or is there a rubric for evaluation of soup?
Of course, there's a rubric that has been refined and stretched out ad nauseum over the years. I would say that the two words that you use that we avoid at all costs in the room are like and favorite, right? That we are trying our best to be objective relative to the name of the soup. And so there's the place where restaurants go awry sometimes, is they, use a name for something that then we use to set the expectation, and then it doesn't live up to it.
Like
right?
if it's a split pea soup, it better taste like some split peas. Otherwise, maybe we're doing it wrong.
The debate we have literally every year is about what you can call chowder and what you can't, and what you should call bisque and what you shouldn't, and what you should call like those debates are great, but they're unsettleable. And so just call it, creamy mushroom soup instead of calling it mushroom bisque, and then you don't have to suffer the, debate.
The slings and arrows of debate. Well, actually, you kind of got close to something I was going to ask. Like, when does a soup become a stew, or when do you get out of the bounds of like, this isn't a soup anymore?
Yeah, that's a great question. That we should have whiskey. If
I like that idea. Yeah,
because
Do we
at some,
allow stew, though? We love stew.
absolutely, we'd love
Absolutely.
stew. At some point in the conversation, though, when you have whiskey, you then include whiskey in the definition of soup. And then everybody realizes that, Darwin didn't create the naming conventions for culinary, right? It was just a bunch of people that came up with what they could come up with. So I say if it needs a spoon rather than a fork, you get to call it soup. But that's just me. And I mean, I get that in some circles that might carry enough weight, but it doesn't carry enough weight in every circle I sit in. So if it's got to be a spoon, but then you're right. Like then cereal counts, and so does maybe ice cream, and so does so. There's not a good line. There's not a good line.
Okay.
Stew, if we would like to let it be a subset of soup, is got pieces of target food that get braised until tender and then served with. So soup doesn't need anything in it. So you could do that braising, strain out all that solids, let that broth stretch somehow, and there's soup too. You could serve that braised meat some other way. You could, like I said, this is a sloppy mess. Delicious is an important characteristic of soup.
Yes.
And using a spoon. I think those are the two things I will say. Must
I
occur.
remember, and I think this was the first year, which would be at least 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
There was ice cream soup.
Yep.
Oh,
Remember?
Yeah.
wow.
Totally threw me off.
MCC, we used to,
Was that you?
we almost exclusively for the first 10 years, I'll say, of our participation, made a dessert soup because I lead the judging. And so we never put MCC soup into the judging. And so they got to be as crazy as they wanted. And so it would usually be somebody came up with a classic dessert that we would then try to craft into soup. Key lime pie We've done hot fudge sundae. We've done carrot cake as soup. So like we used to do all these kind of sideways takes on,
Yeah.
right? Which is really fun.
Wow.
Some hot, some cold, some with stuff in them, some not. Like,
Well, that answers my other question, because I was wondering if any cold soups have been submitted for art and soup, and it sounds like they certainly have.
Indeed.
So,
Absolutely.
some type of fishy swaff coming from somebody.
has happened. Gazpacho happens a lot.
Oh, I love some
Many of those
gazpacho.
dessert soups have been cold. I mean, the ice cream soup was cold. Like, I'd even be interested in seeing the opposite direction happen, right? That somebody makes a classic soup like, bouillabaisse, chicken consomme, something like that, but then converts that into some sort of solid eat with a fork thing. So now it's the invert of the definition, but still possible. I don't know. I had duck fat ice cream at Dante a couple years ago, and I thought, this could be at Art and Soup. I mean, it would not win People's Choice because you used the word duck fat. Please take no offense to that. It was delicious. But I will say this kind of riffing that we're talking about is also central to many chefs' desire to participate. That lots of people that grow into leadership roles in the restaurant food service world lose the ability to riff like this, to just come up with crazy and go. And Art and Soup lets those gloves come off for people that most places don't bring their famous soup. Some do, and that's wonderful. But M's Pub is maybe the best example over the years. They would just bring all sorts of crazy. And it was a great chance for their chefs to just stretch their legs and see what they wanted to do.
Wonderful.
It's also a great place to let number two stretch their legs, right? That it's
Sure.
somebody coming up in your shop that you say, hey, here's this opportunity. You want to, put something together for it?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Carole, do you remember, was Avoli the winner last year? Is that, do you happen to
Brian, I'm
recall?
hoping you remember
And it's
that.
okay
Was
if
it
you don't. They'll
Avoli?
just have to come this year and find out who this year's winner is.
maybe it was
Because, that soup's over.
I'm going to say yes.
And I
Probably
think
Avoli.
People's Choice was Chef Haddam.
Yes, I think you're right. Chef Haddam Catering.
Oh, okay.
Who's not yet on our list this year.
Okay. All right.
I'll need to reach
Better
back
reach
out to him.
Yes.
Goodness
But
gracious.
on Closer View, we're at 19 soups.
19.
19 restaurants right now.
Wow. So I know we got a couple of restaurant names out there. Did you have a couple more passing through that we wanted to let the people know about what type of soup they can expect?
Well, I don't always know the name of their soup yet,
Oh, sure. But restaurant wise, so
right?
that- yes.
And I try to not share the name of soup through my channel.
Understood.
Because then the judges hear it, and I don't want to.
Gotcha.
mess
Okay.
with the,
Yes. We don't need to do that. The
private
people can
there.
show up and find out
you
what
go.
soups are there.
I absolutely love that we have several kind of nonprofit shelters,
Yeah.
places like that. So Stevens Center is in again this year doing soup. We already talked about the crew from Open Door Mission being in. They've got an amazing team there. But also Udalali, the
Yeah.
restaurant in Dundee that's doing some amazing work with at-risk populations.
Yeah.
Is doing it. But then we also get some hospitals and places like that, like Methodist Hospital is in. They always that's the perfect example of the place where you've got these hyper talented culinarians that kind of live in a box. I mean,
Sure.
they don't get to stretch their legs like this, and so things like this, they get a cool opportunity to do something maybe a little more exciting than they do every day. That's not saying that the food at Methodist isn't exciting. It's just it's not Pitch or Avoli or places like that where they're
They probably
crazy
have
all
to
the
have a
time.
little more restrained hand with both the salt and the duck fat when you're working at the hospital. I have a feeling. So, but
I don't know. Do we
maybe
have
not.
studies that say duck fat's not good for you? I can't believe that.
I don't know. Maybe that's true. Maybe
That's a
somebody's not
joke.
getting
I'm
enough
sure.
of that.
I'm sure it's terrible.
Well, Carole, how would you describe the environment at the Omaha Design Center? So if somebody was going to park and well, first of all, what's the parking situation?
First of all, free parking.
oh, so I don't have to
even
plug the meter then.
Free
Okay.
valet parking.
What?
Yes.
Oh, that's fancy.
I mean, how good is that?
I get there too early too. I
You
don't
get
ever
there-
see
yeah,
the valet.
Right?
Okay, all
But
right.
we have free valet parking. Then we have parking across the street. And we have thank you to Kiewit as one of our sponsors, providing some parking spaces across the street.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
there is ample parking. Please don't let that scare you away. And if you don't want to look for parking and walk across the street, hand your keys to the valet and they will take care of you.
Well, and if you happen to get overloaded on having, if you've been overserved soup, then
Yeah.
you might have to.
Or you're expecting to have arms full of art to carry
Yes,
out.
yes. Oh, that's true. You might need somebody to bring the car around so you can put your paintings and yourself into the car because you might
Absolutely.
need some assistance. how about inside the Omaha Design Center? What's the layout of the event? What can when they open the doors? What happens?
Yeah, you know what? It's really festive from the beginning. In fact, the graphic designer who created our logo for Art and Soup, she created it. It looks like a mobile. And last year, she created a life-size mobile. Like it's a 7-foot wide
It's very
mobile
cool.
that when you come into the lobby, it's hanging there.
Oh, I love it.
And it's beautiful and colorful. And shout out to you, Lynn, for doing that.
Yep.
And so you come in, and from the beginning, there's some music going. It's very festive. The restaurants are all around the outside, so the outer perimeter. And then the artists and the art festival are on the inner area, and so you can decide what you want to do. You can eat a little bit, and while you're eating, you can walk through some art, and you go get another helping of something, and you walk through some more art. That's how a lot of people tend to do it. And
Very much.
You're talking to the artists and you're talking to the chefs. There are some people who take their judging, their People's Choice judging, very seriously.
Very
I'm
seriously.
amazed every year.
I like people that
Yes.
taste every soup in order to make their
They're
people's
like,
choice.
I have to
love
taste
it.
every single
I
one
love
of them. Yeah.
Taste everything, I hear, is a good
Yes.
rule.
Rule number 10.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, and just a lot of interaction and laughter and fun, and like I said,
It feels
it's
very
just
much like a
unique.
street
And-
festival.
Yeah, and when
But
you
inside.
feel like you've had enough, you go home.
Yep.
I love it, and
You
it's
know?
and it's inside. So
It's
our
indoors,
Nebraska
yeah.
weather. Now we've here today, as we are sitting, have been very fortunate by the weather.
lovely.
But
Gorgeous.
but the prior week wasn't quite as nice to us. So regardless of weather, you're doing okay there because it's all indoors. So
That's right.
That's quite
I
nice.
think
right.
it plays to the. I always argue for going earlier in the year because I love it when it snows outside because that's soup weather.
Oh yeah.
I then see people packing up their $700 pieces of art, and I feel kind of bad. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe the slush isn't awesome for that moment, but I loved the. We used to always do it on Oscar night. I don't know when that is, but mid-Feb sometime, like right now. Which I guess we're only a week from now, but
A couple weeks later, yeah.
I do. I love when the snow's on the ground for this event, but I get it. Like that, it is, turn off to some, but nothing's better than 20 soups on a cold day.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's marvelous that way.
From the art standpoint, just very high level, we are talking both art and soup. What type of art exists there? A bunch of paintings?
Full gamut, really. It's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of different mediums and price points. We like that too. So you can get earrings, you can get sculpture, paintings, glass blowing, woodwork.
Yeah.
There's just, folks are
Photography.
just so creative.
Well,
Photography.
there's so much. I've probably bought, 10 things over the years.
Nice.
And I'm not buying, I don't have any money. I can't, right? So there's stuff that's, cool photography for $50.
Yeah.
And super nice things that people that swim in another end of the pool than me buy for their entryway and their magnificent homes.
Yeah.
And there's things that you buy to give your girlfriend because they're, art handcrafted earrings.
Sure.
Yeah,
really
beautiful.
cool
So,
stuff.
and I know then if I spend $30 on a pair of earrings, which I might do at a department store anyway, right? Half of that is going to the cause, and half of it's going to the artist, and they're there with that same intent as the restaurants of saying, we want to be here and we want to give back. But that's the fun of it. Is we have a great committee who really diversifies the art.
It's amazing.
The diversity then of soup. I'm assuming there's a pretty wide variety. So we didn't want to give away what's going to be on the table or in the bowl this year, but
Fair
maybe some examples from prior years, because I'm guessing there aren't 20 chicken noodle soups. Nothing wrong with that, and they could all be different. They probably would. But what's some of the spectrum of soup, if you will?
Yeah, you see a wide variety of things. Last year we had this really cool Haitian, like pumpkin and ackee soup that Wilson did from Le Voltaire.
Oh, yeah.
It was really awesome. So you see things on that end. Obviously, the Ono Panay folks do kind of Polynesian-driven. They did a ube soup, which is that like purple yam,
yeah.
that creates that was cold soup. Creates a very unique mouthfeel. It very much felt like melted ice cream soup. I don't mean for that to sound bad. Melted was a very unique texture, but sometimes you also have cheesy buffalo chicken with cauliflower on it. Like
Sure.
There's some those kind of soups win people's choice every year, right? The like big pot of hot cheesy that you could dump tortilla chips in. Like that is a great soup too. I mean, full gamut. Avoli a couple years ago did a consommé with like poached eggs in it and all this very unique stuff that I think did not maybe have the mass appeal, but like the pros in the house that know like what does it take to pull off a soup like that blew us away. Like you see the full spectrum.
Are the chefs and those that are there fairly receptive to questions about their soups?
All day.
That is the fun of part of the fun of the event. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
The chefs that don't like that bring somebody with that stands at the front of the table.
That's
but it really is. I mean, it's really the heart of the event. And they're doing it with each other in a cool way, that they're learning about what each other do for soup and learning about each other's operations. And it really is a great social amongst the chefs and restaurateurs as well.
What does it take for a restaurant to prepare and get this ready to show up at a remote location, I guess?
It's not an easy win.
Yeah. So as far as prep and travel, and then also how do you gauge quantity? Like what are the logistics that are concerned with making a soup happen at Art and Soup?
Yeah. You've landed on why we liked cold soup so much back in the day. Because that is one of the great challenges, is delivering that much quantity downrange hot. Caterers are super good at stuff like that, but a lot of restaurants don't operate like that all the time. So it is a challenge. Most of them arrive hot in insulated containers and then bring it up to kind of even hotter temp for service by bringing in a little cassette burner or a chafing pan or things like that. Some bring cold and heat on site. We've done that in the past. That's dangerous with a thick soup. That takes a lot of energy to go from 0 to 1. But if you're running a broth soup, that can be pretty straightforward to just bring it cold and heat from there. But there's all different kinds of ways to do it. If there's any restaurants that are listening, don't try to do it electrically, like that people want to bring grandma's roasting pan and plug in 5 of those and then dump their cold soup in it. But
blowing circuit breakers.
And then all the lights go off on the art when they do that. So bringing it hot is hot and hold it is the way to go, especially for the guys that are close enough to maybe make that run more than once, right? That somebody heats up the next batch around the corner and then puts it in an insulated container and brings it over. That's totally the way to go. But I mean, you see it all different ways, right? That sometime last year, in fact, the soup from Avoli, they were doing kind of a fresh saute of veg and wine and things like that, and then adding broth to it and adding other things to it, and then putting that in the shafer and then serving that. So they're really producing the fresh finished product right there on site.
And you can imagine how fun that is for folks who are coming
just to
by,
watch.
right?
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. See people working in their element there.
It's a blast.
Wow. And how much soup do the restaurants produce? How many people attend, or how many bowls of soup does one need to be ready to serve?
So attendance is usually about 1,000 to 1,200 people. Restaurants, we really push them to prep for 700. That's, seems like bad marketing to say that not everybody will have soup for everybody, but non-professional eaters can't eat 20 bowls of soup anyway. I get that we want
not
to
everybody eats
20 bowls of soup.
all of them.
That's a lot of bowls.
And so you're doing about a 4-ounce portion.
Okay.
So for 700, that's 2,800 ounces of soup. That's about 10 gallons. So you're doing a lot of soup.
That is a lot of soup. And 24-ounce portions there. That's
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of soup right there. Are the restaurants allowed to bring any accoutrement, some sides for their soup? So are you serving with bread or crackers, or is like, no, you must serve soup?
There are people that have brought bread over the years. Most of the time, they're bringing it as, I will say, condiment rather than accoutrement, things that are in the soup, maybe added at the last minute, but not things that they would leave to the guest to add in, right? That they've decided to top with what they think is the right thing for the soup. But I certainly have seen folks that, are bringing, you might want to add croutons, or you might want to add, we did a soup one year that we added popcorn to. And, some people were like, ooh, no. And so, you don't add it, and then they add some later. That's fine.
That makes sense. Well, yeah, because if I have a pozole or some menudo, I might need some specific toppings in various ratios depending on what I'm doing there. So
Yep. And, I would say some of those traditional people steer away from, maybe because of how customized people like it that already like it. But they may do it as kind of a version of that they then top as they see fit.
Gotcha.
Because, you're doing 700 samples, portions of your soup in just a few hours. Like you're moving as a restaurant to put out that many cups of soup. So you can't lollygag all that much. Like those guys they're moving it.
And is there anyone making sure that the art and soup don't combine? So you don't end up with soup on art or art in soup.
Well,
It's a pretty safe soup environment.
We blame the bartenders to take care of that.
Have to watch the
or
open
the
bar.
artist saying step back.
Well, between that, artists are good to defend their own creations. That's good. Between the kind of soup ring and the art ring is our partnership with Hillside Solutions. So the event is waste free, has been for a few years now, where everything that we generate as throughput from the event is compostable.
Wow.
And so Hillside Solutions, maybe we could see as kind of that barrier too between the person that's now not paying attention to their soup and the art is the stations that we set up to be the place where that composting happens. But
And kudos to Brian for getting us there, of being to that place where everything's compostable.
it was not an easy lift. I mean, there's lots of faux postables, faux compostables. I don't know how to say that right out there in the world, and so there's a lot of soup cups at this event.
Sure.
And if you don't buy exactly the right thing, then it doesn't compost. And so making sure we make those choices right has been something Hillside's been a great partner in helping us accomplish.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because if you've got 1,000 people there with spoons and bowls and maybe more than one spoon or more than one bowl, then
for sure more than
gracious.
one bowl. We encourage
them to keep
your
their
spoon.
Yeah. Oh,
Right, so
good call.
the compostable spoon is nicer than the super cheap disposable spoon. So like from a quality of the soup perspective, I love that. Right, because those little injected white plastic ones that melt at mouth temperature, that's not good for a soup.
No.
Anyway, I don't really know what that is good for, actually.
I don't. I ran into some ice cream that was served with one of those once, and it was just
Not
a
possible.
battle. Exactly. Just you might as well eat it with your hands because it was easier.
So I support that.
So
I support that over those wood things they used to give you at the baseball stadium too.
the paddles.
Oh, yeah.
Or
No,
you get
those are that may be one of the worst things to happen.
When you get
flatware.
it was kind of the fake ice cream in a cup with a cardboard lid and then a totally flat
Yes.
kayak paddle of serving.
Perfect.
Yes.
I will say I've also seen people over the years just drinking their soup, just
Totally.
shooting it.
I support that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
As hard as you approach stew level, but
Speaking of drinking soup, and we don't have time to get into this, but I was at the House of Ba culinary capstone this year.
I'm sad I missed it.
And I missed you, Chef O'Malley.
Yeah.
One of the soups served was essentially a hollowed out potato with meat and squash, but it was served in this clear consomme.
Nice.
I had a really hard time just not picking up that bowl and just
Right.
dumping it right down because it looked
I believe
so
that.
good, so good. But Carole, I have a hard hitting question for you.
Yes, sir.
That I did not prepare you for. So
Okay.
So we're gonna the listeners are gonna hear it right now.
Okay,
Our
hit me.
contact from the VNA had no knowledge of this. Here we go. Do you have a favorite type of soup?
I am a sucker for a really good white chicken chili.
A white chicken chili.
Big
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Green peppers, like green chilies.
Yeah.
Yeah, love.
Spicy? Not spicy?
Little spicy.
Little
yeah.
spicy?
A little bit.
Okay. Now, do you have any? We haven't really gotten into your culinary background. Do you cook soup at home? Do you have a soup that you, Carole, make?
No, I don't think you want any soup that I make at home.
So you stick to the eating side of soup.
I will when it comes to soup, I would rather have somebody else make it.
That is fair. Okay, all right. So I'm turning the virtual pointer here towards you, Chef O'Malley. Do you have maybe a go-to soup or one that makes you happy? And then, do you cook soup at home?
I do cook soup at home. It is one of my favorite things to cook at home. It's not a fan favorite around the house. It gets requests to have a soup day, but I would do soup with some frequency. Like it's just a perfect way to use the refrigerator.
Sure.
So I love that about soup production. Do I have a favorite? I mean, truly. My dad's chili is maybe my favorite.
Beans or no beans?
Beans.
Beans, okay.
It's become a little more random as of late. He also believes in cleaning the refrigerator into the soup, but includes the chili in that. I love beans in all manner of soup. So like the white chicken chili, but I love, a cup or two of beans in whatever soup. I love stuff like that. But I love Italian wedding soup. I mean, there's so many good ones. Potatoes in soup, though, are high on my list of things I love.
Okay.
But not puree. Like, I like that.
Sure.
But the texture of like properly cooked potato against broth, I really like that. I really like that texture. There's some famous Indian soups, Thai soups, maybe more accurately, that have potato in them. We frequently eat them over rice, but they're really soups, and they have those hunks of potato in there. That is this awkward mashup to me of how did we get potato in the middle of that?
Yeah.
But I love them. They're delicious.
That's wonderful. My mother, probably my two favorite soups of hers. We talked about split pea early on. That was one, split pea with ham. When the kids are old enough, nice shot of sherry on top of your split pea soup. But the other one is potato soup. And she hit a very good line of not fully pureed, but also not super chunky. She just hit it somewhere in the middle where I love soup, and it's nice when you can just drink a soup too, but I want something that is approaching a bite for me. I want a little texture in there, and so I really enjoy that when it's balanced well.
That it can stand a little bit on the spoon.
Yes.
Right, that it's not just broth.
Yes.
It's hard for me because I really do love all of it. So
Sure.
I'm in, but your conversation, your mom's ham and split pea reminded me of my grandmother's like ham and white bean.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Not
That's
because,
what
I love that soup, but she always served it with a little, like a cap full of white vinegar.
Oh, yeah.
That you like added per bite so it wouldn't lose its sharpness.
Yeah.
And raw, but like paper thin shaved onions.
Oh, how fun.
And like, I mean, it's such a rustic soup, but then that little bit of care. And I didn't even really notice. Like when I was a kid, I didn't like ring a bell. I think I probably avoided the vinegar. That seemed weird, maybe. But now as an adult, I love it. I mean, that like deep, long simmered, kind of excessively salty, like ham bone after Easter with white beans, love. But then that sharp pain that comes from the vinegar in there and the little bit of fresh crunchy from the onions, love that soup.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, that's my favorite soup.
I remember being
I love
That's
that.
it.
I
That's
remember
it.
being really surprised. It was 2 or 3 years ago. Matt Mosier from Sternella
Yes.
made it was like a squash soup, and I looked at it and I thought, I don't know. But then, I got to try this, and it was so
I have
yummy.
to predict that I don't think Matt Mosier ever participated and didn't win.
I
Oh.
think that's true. Every time he participated, he won the stock pot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Know something about
But
some soup then.
Oh, there was something about
Yeah.
that squash soup.
He's a top 5 chef in the city. Like he has incredible touch, great palate.
That's
There's
wonderful.
one spot left, chef, if you
Matt
want to.
Mosier.
Calling you
This will
out
be
there,
too
Chef.
late for him to say yes by the time he hears this.
You might get a text from Chef O'Malley later, though. So,
I'll work on that.
well, if someone is homeless and needs assistance and has the drive or inkling to say, I need to get some help and I'd like to get out of this situation and get a little bit of my independence, my life back, and a house. How does a person do that? Where do they go? Who do they call? And well, you might not even have a phone. So how does
Right,
what's the best
right.
way that maybe somebody would do that?
Well, and I think any medical professional knows how to get folks in touch with the shelters, and both in Council Bluffs and Omaha, we have excellent shelter systems, and really caring folks, who are working there. So I can't think of a shelter in this town that is not just good to people and will take care of you when you get there. But if you don't know what to do, you can ask any medical professional. You can, I would say, you could also dial United Way's 211 line, and I'm sure they would direct you. Get you in the right direction. But
I see clergy in this
Thank
role.
you. Clergy
that a
are
lot of
good.
people
Yep.
at church do this. I also see law enforcement playing in this
thank you.
space.
That's a good
Like,
one,
they-
too.
They do
Law
a good
enforcement.
job.
I saw they were checking on some of the homeless encampments here
Yep.
recently with it being
Yep.
so
Saw that last
cold.
night, too.
freezing cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's the thing is that they're visible, and so the people that want to help know those places to go. The hard part is they don't always have the resources that they need to help, and so that's what's so great about this is it's a chance to be able to provide without having to like push out into that work, right? Like I wish I had the bravery to do it. I don't know. I see people do it and I hear people tell those stories and I think, man, I could do it. Like I could, pack up some of these leftovers and go find people on the street right now. And I don't know. I make this come true as my way to do it,
Yeah.
rather than otherwise. But I'm so impressed by the people that can do that level of like
Yeah.
straight up in the reach out game. They're amazing. They make the world.
To be able to come into a shelter, get some help from the VNA, a chef-driven meal that's like, oh my goodness, I'm not eating whatever I found lying around or somebody handed to me. I have a hot, fresh meal. To be able to then concentrate maybe on changing some of those other things because I don't have to worry about 19 of those things. Maybe I only need to worry about 10, which is still a lot, but can start to focus then on the remaining items. All right, back to soup for just a second. if somebody's going to start making soup at home, would there be a recommended soup chef that somebody could maybe look into and get their start in soup?
Great question. I would say that the most frequent thing I do at home, that we do in our house at home, is chicken stock out of every roasted chicken. So whether that's a rotisserie that we bought at the grocery store or that we've roasted ourselves, like we just never let those bones go away. And so that act of like understanding the value of the long, slow simmer and the flavor that it develops, and then whether that turns into soup or just is fortifies a little sauce that you're doing for something else, or it gives you this like base flavor that can spread out over lots of things. So there's one. But the other really is chili. Doing chili is such a great lesson in solubility, right? That one of the things that's critical about how soup gets made is what you're trying to have flavor the broth, right? That there are some things that don't dissolve well in water, and therefore if trying to use them in a soup is kind of pointless unless that soup has fat present, because that's the only other thing things are soluble in is fat. And so most of the chemical compounds that are flavorful are minerals that are fat or water soluble. Well, all of them have to be one or the other. And so that is a magnificent like lesson of how that all works. Now, you don't got to like dig into the science in order to do that, but the difference between a 15-minute chili where you only get the spices that then represent themselves to your tongue, or a 3-hour chili, maybe even one that cooled down and rethermed tomorrow. Now those spices are subtle but permeate every bite, that aren't as like that. The lessons that come from all of those accidentally, like there's the thing is that so much of, I mean, we do this at school too much, right? That we try to understand it before we do it. And there's too many things going on for that. Like it's way better to make it and make it and make it and make it and then go, wait a minute, why is reheated chili so different than like quick simmered or long, like, and then getting into it once you have all the frame of reference.
With soup, if it's undersalted, you can add salt.
Yeah.
What if somebody oversalts their soup? Is there any going back? Is there any hope, chef?
Of course. I mean, it's just a solution. So you just dilute it, right? Or depending on what kind of soup it is, if it hasn't been thickened by starch already, adding starch to it, rice, potatoes, things like that, that will themselves participate in the osmotic process and take up salts, then you could take those out if you want, is a fabulous way to get salt out of it. But if you've already thickened by starch, right, so you've got like a creamy, thick soup, you got to dilute it.
Got to dilute it.
So that answer is brandy, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, okay.
Those are a good way to go.
And with enough brandy, then maybe depending on your salt level.
But if you make your own stock, right? So when you make stock, you shouldn't put salt in it anyway, right? So it acts as a better solute when there isn't already other stuff dissolved in it. So no salt in it. Well, then you just have 7 days in your fridge with it, but use it up in 7 days, right? And then you're adding it, and you haven't put any salt in. So then you can adjust all of that later. Now, if people called into this show, there would be chefs that call in and are mad that I say, don't put salt in your stock when you make it. And it's a wonderful fight to have. But I'm a believer in no salt when you make the stock.
Just a good base for a canvas, if you will, to create whatever.
Because most of the time that extra saltiness comes from over simmer, right? That you've seasoned at a point at which you're happy, and then you let it simmer.
To reduce.
The salt doesn't go away in the evaporation, right? It'll stay in the solution. I mean, it's the reason you get white rings around things, right? The heavier compounds will stay. And so as it simmers, water leaves, but salt stays. And the more volatile liquids, the brandy that you put in, or that vinegar if you put it in early, or wine, or any of those things, those all get out even faster. So adding that stuff late can also help cut a bunch of that.
This is a perfect episode because we have discussed not only Art and Soup, which is March 9th, 2025, at 1502 Cummings in the Omaha Design Center with free parking and 19 plus soups, I think is what we're looking at this time.
If House of Boss listening.
That's, yeah. You
Chef,
bring
we
soup.
need you.
And essentially all you can eat. And
Just such
Best
a good
cause.
cause.
absolutely. And to help the VNA and in their mission here, and a fun event with a good cause and wonderful things. So we got to talk about all of that. We have some cooking tips. We've got some favorite soups out there. We had a lot of good conversation. We probably need to turn the faders down because we only get the listener's ear for so long. So, Carole Patrick of the VNA, thank you so much. And Chef
Thank
Brian
you.
O'Malley, thank you for being with us again in varying capacities. And this time for Art and Soup. It's good to talk to you both.
Such a pleasure. Thank
Pleasure
you.
to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, as we say on the show, until we eat again, stay hungry. Bye.
Our show is recorded and produced by Saturday Omaha. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as email SaturdayOmaha@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and stay hungry.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this.